Title: HOA Demolished My Dam for Unpaid Fees, then watched their whole neighborhood sink. I never wanted trouble with the HOA. That was the first thing I told myself when we moved into Willow Creek Estates 4 years ago, a quiet, preen suburban community tucked behind iron gates and lined with manicured lawns. My wife, Emily, had fallen in love with the lake view, the walking paths, and the promise of safety. I fell in love with the land itself, the acres of forest that backed up to our property and the gentle stream that ran through it. That stream was more than just scenery for me. I'm a civil engineer by trade. So when the stream started overflowing every rainy season, threatening to flood our basement, I built a small retaining dam, about 4 feet high, made of stone and reinforced concrete. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. For 3 years, not a drop of water touched our foundation. The HOA never mentioned it. Not until Linda McPherson became president. Linda was exactly the type of person who made you understand why people hate HOAs. Platinum blonde hair, wide-brimmed sun hat, clipboard glued to her hand. She patrolled the neighborhood in a golf cart with a little flag on the back that said Community Pride Patrol. I wish I were joking. It started with letters. Your mailbox paint does not conform to community standards. Your lawn exceeds height regulation by approximately 1.5 inches. Then, the one that set everything in motion. Unauthorized structure detected on your property. Remove or face fines. The unauthorized structure was my dam. I called her immediately, trying to be polite. Linda, it's not a structure. It's a safety measure. The stream. All structures must be pre-approved by the HOA Architectural Committee. She cut me off. Her tone was syrupy sweet but condescending. You can submit a retroactive application. There's a $250 review fee. I sighed but filled out the forms anyway. I attached diagrams, flow data, even a letter from the county inspector approving my design. A month later, the HOA denied it. The structure does not maintain the aesthetic consistency of the community, their letter read. Aesthetic consistency. They were worried my little dam didn't match the neighborhood's beige siding and vinyl fences. I appealed. They rejected it again. 2 weeks later, I received an invoice for $1,750 in unauthorized construction penalties. That was the first time I said it out loud to Emily. They're out of control. She rubbed my shoulders, trying to calm me down. Let it go, Mark. It's not worth it. But it was worth it. That dam wasn't just a hobby. It protected our home. Over the next 6 months, the letters escalated. Late fees, fines, interest. I refused to pay, on principle. The total ballooned to over $5,000. Then came the notice taped to our front door. Final warning. Non-compliance will result in corrective action. I thought it was just another scare tactic. I was wrong. On a gray morning in March, I was working in my garage when I heard the sound of heavy machinery. I stepped outside to find a yellow excavator idling by the creek, flanked by 2 HOA board members and a couple of hired contractors. Linda was standing there in a raincoat, clipboard in hand, grinning. "We're here to remove your illegal structure," she said. I walked toward her, trying to keep my voice level. "You can't do that. This is private property." "Actually," she said, flipping through her papers, "the HOA bylaws permit enforcement of architectural violations after due notice. That doesn't mean you can demolish something on my land." She tilted her head, smile unwavering. "You should have paid your fees." The excavator roared to life. I ran toward it, shouting, waving my arms. The operator hesitated, but Linda signaled him forward. The first bite of the bucket tore through the stone wall, cracking it like a jawbone. I felt something inside me crack too. By the time they finished, the dam was nothing but rubble. The water, which had been calm and contained, now flowed freely. The creek widened, muddy and wild. I stood there in the drizzle, shoes sinking into the wet soil, watching years of work and peace collapse. Linda handed me a final notice. "Your property is now in compliance," she said. Emily came running down the hill when she heard the noise. She froze at the sight. "Oh my God, Mark, what did they do?" I didn't answer. For a while, I considered suing. I even talked to a lawyer friend, but the cost would have been astronomical, and the HOA had deep pockets. So I did what I could. I fixed what was left. I rebuilt a smaller retaining wall, this time just enough to keep the water away from our foundation, nothing fancy. But something changed after that day. I started noticing the looks from neighbors. Pity, mostly, but also fear. Everyone in Willow Creek knew what happened. Some of them had their own run-ins with Linda. She'd fined one family for having a trampoline visible from the street, another for using the wrong color mulch. It wasn't about rules. It was about control. By June, the rain came again. Not a drizzle, full spring storms that rolled in for days. The creek swelled higher and higher, spilling over its banks. I watched it from my window at night, the headlights of passing cars reflecting off the water like silver veins. Then, one morning, I noticed something strange. The water wasn't stopping. It had jumped the channel entirely and was now cutting through the far side of the neighborhood, downhill, toward the cul-de-sac where Linda lived. Her house was one of the lowest points in Willow Creek. That evening, the HOA sent out an email warning residents about excessive runoff and advising them to move valuables off the floor. I almost laughed. You see, my dam hadn't just kept my property dry. It had regulated the entire downstream flow through the neighborhood. Without it, the natural drainage was overwhelmed. 2 days later, a storm hit, the kind that turns ditches into rivers. From my porch, I could see the water rising fast. It was rushing past my property, straight toward Linda's street. The next morning, I woke to sirens. Emergency vehicles were parked all along Willow Creek Lane. Firefighters, police, even county engineers were there. Half the cul-de-sac was underwater. Lawns were gone, replaced by brown, swirling pools. Some driveways were impassable. Linda stood in her driveway, drenched to the knees, arguing with a firefighter. "This is outrageous," she shouted. "We pay HOA fees for drainage maintenance." The firefighter just shook his head. "Ma'am, this looks like a natural overflow. The retaining system upstream is missing." Her face turned pale. I watched from the edge of my property, silent. The irony was bitter and cold. By noon, the county had blocked off the road. Reporters showed up. Drones hovered overhead, filming the flooded homes. I stayed out of sight, but I could hear neighbors talking. "Didn't Mark used to have something up there?" One man whispered. "Yeah," another replied. "The HOA made him tear it down." Linda tried to spin the narrative. That evening, an email went out from the HOA board. To all residents, the flooding incident was caused by unforeseen weather conditions. The HOA is coordinating with county officials to assess damage. Please refrain from speculation. But speculation was all anyone did. 2 families packed up and left within a week. The rest stayed quiet. I didn't take any satisfaction in what happened. Not really. Watching neighbors lose their property wasn't something to celebrate. But when I saw Linda's yard turned into a shallow pond, her prized garden gnomes half submerged, I couldn't help but feel a grim sense of balance. Emily asked me one night, as we stood by the window, "Do you think she knows?" I looked out at the dark, rippling water beyond the streetlights. "Oh, she knows," I said. Still, I expected her to retaliate somehow, to send another fine, another letter. But for weeks, there was silence. The HOA meetings were canceled. Their newsletter stopped coming. Until one day, I found a note in my mailbox. No letterhead, no signature, just a single line written in blue ink. "You did this." I stood there for a long time, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need to guess who wrote it. Linda. That night, I checked the creek again. The water had receded, but the damage downstream was severe. The earth was gouged, the banks collapsed. The cul-de-sac was a mess of mud and debris. I felt a pang of guilt, even though I hadn't caused the flood directly. The HOA had destroyed my dam, but maybe I could have warned them. Maybe I could have tried harder to fix it. Or maybe they deserve to see what happens when you break something you don't understand. The neighborhood hasn't been the same since. Houses sit half empty. The HOA is in shambles. Half the board resigned after the insurance refused to cover the flood damage. Linda is still there, though. I see her sometimes, walking past my property, glaring at the creek like it personally betrayed her. The county has been talking about rebuilding the retention system, but funding is slow. They might end up reinstalling something similar to my old dam. Sometimes I wonder if Linda realizes the irony. Sometimes, when the sky darkens and thunder rolls over Willow Creek, I go down to the water and listen. The current is stronger now, unpredictable, but in the quiet moments between the rain, I can almost hear it whispering, waiting. The first summer after the flood was strange. Half the lawns in Willow Creek estates turned brown from neglect. The HOA used to send out landscapers every week, But with their budget gutted by legal fees and damage claims, they could barely afford to maintain the common areas. The once immaculate neighborhood now looked ordinary, messy even, like the rest of the world. For a while, that suited me just fine. I kept to myself, mowing my own lawn, fixing the small things around the house that didn't require permission slips or forms. Emily was happier, too. She said it felt like the neighborhood had finally relaxed. Kids rode bikes again. Someone even painted their door red without getting fined. But the peace didn't last. Because Linda McPherson wasn't done. She might have lost control of the HOA, but she wasn't the kind of woman to fade quietly. She started small, emails, thinly veiled complaints to the county about environmental hazards near my property. Then came the property inspector, unannounced, clipboard in hand, claiming to be following up on a resident report. When I asked who filed it, he just shrugged. But I knew. Linda. Every time it rained, she'd be out there, standing by her flooded yard, staring at my house like I had summoned the storm myself. Once, I caught her taking photos of the creek with her phone. Another time, she followed me halfway down the street when I took the trash out, pretending to be on a call, but clearly eavesdropping. Emily told me to ignore her. Let her dig her own hole, she said. People see what she's doing. Maybe she was right, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. One afternoon, I got a letter, official looking, with the HOA's letterhead again. I thought they'd dissolved, but apparently, Linda had clawed her way back onto the board. It read, Notice of property violation. Unapproved alterations to natural waterway detected. Homeowner is required to attend a compliance hearing scheduled for August 14th. I laughed out loud when I read it. Emily didn't. This is harassment, she said. You should document everything. I did. I took photos of the creek, the bank, the erosion. Everything was exactly as the county had left it after their inspection. I had letters proving it. Still, the idea of facing that board again, especially Linda, made my stomach knot. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse. It used to be filled with the smell of coffee and pastries during HOA gatherings, but this time it reeked of damp carpet and mildew. The flooding had reached that far, too. When I walked in, Linda was already there, sitting at the head of the table. Two other board members flanked her, newer faces, clearly uncomfortable. She smiled when she saw me. Mr. Halpern, she said smoothly. Thank you for attending. We're here to discuss ongoing concerns about your property. I sat down, setting my folder of evidence on the table. You mean the creek? The same creek your board destroyed last year. Her smile tightened. Let's keep this civil. One of the newer board members, a man named Rick, cleared his throat. Linda, maybe we should. Linda cut him off. Mr. Halpern's dam was not authorized, and the resulting flooding created hazards for multiple homes. I leaned forward. No, Linda. The removal of that dam caused the flooding. You ignored county permits, destroyed a safety structure, and put the whole neighborhood at risk. Rick glanced at me, uncertain. Do you have proof of that? I opened my folder and slid a set of papers across the table. Here, county engineer's report. It says exactly that. Linda didn't even look. She folded her arms. The HOA acted in accordance with community bylaws. I couldn't help but smile. And look where that got you. The room went quiet. After a moment, Linda gathered her papers. This hearing is adjourned. We'll review the matter and contact you with a decision. I stood up. Sure you will. As I left, I caught Rick whispering to her. Linda, maybe we should just let it go. She didn't answer. 2 days later, I found tire tracks on the grass near my back fence. Not from my car. The ground was still wet from rain, and the prints led straight toward the creek. Someone had been back there. That night, I installed a motion-activated camera on a tree overlooking the bank. I didn't tell anyone, not even Emily. I just wanted to know if my paranoia was justified. It didn't take long to find out. The following morning, my phone buzzed with a notification from the camera app. I opened the feed and froze. The grainy video showed Linda, unmistakably, crouched near the creek with a flashlight and what looked like a metal pole. She was stabbing at the soil near the base of the embankment, loosening it. I watched in disbelief as she stood up, took a few photos with her phone, then walked back toward the fence. She was trying to make it look like the bank was eroding, as if my property was unstable or unsafe. That night, I downloaded the footage, labeled it, and emailed it to myself for safekeeping. I didn't know what my next move was, but I wasn't going to play defensively anymore. A week later, the neighborhood erupted. It started with a message thread on the community Facebook group. Someone named Trisha L. posted a photo of a document Linda had sent out, a new set of proposed HOA rules. Things like, residents must submit requests before planting trees or shrubs. Vehicles parked on driveways for more than 48 hours are subject to fines. Exterior decorations, including garden fixtures and mailboxes, must adhere to community-approved color palettes. People lost it. Comments flooded in. Some were furious. Others laughed at how ridiculous it was. Someone posted a meme of Linda in a dictator's uniform, holding a clipboard. It went viral in the group within hours. I stayed quiet until Linda responded. These rules are for the safety and uniformity of Willow Creek Estates. Anyone opposing them clearly does not value our community standards. That was the spark. Someone replied, "You mean the same standards that got half our homes flooded?" Within minutes, the comment section exploded. Dozens of residents jumped in, bringing up the flood, the fines, the dam. Screenshots of emails, letters, even text messages circulated. People had receipts. And then, someone shared my video. I hadn't leaked it, not directly, but I had shown it to Rick during a private conversation earlier that week. He must have been the one who passed it on. The footage of Linda sneaking behind my property hit the group like a bomb. Within an hour, it had hundreds of reactions. Angry emojis, shocked faces. Comments piled up. She's sabotaging people's yards now. This is criminal. Get her off the board. By that evening, there was an emergency meeting scheduled. When I showed up, the clubhouse was packed. Standing room only. Neighbors who hadn't spoken to me in months were now nodding in my direction, whispering. Linda sat at the front, pale but defiant. Rick stood beside her, holding a laptop connected to the projector. When the video played on the wall, the room went dead silent. Linda didn't look at the screen. She stared straight ahead, her jaw trembling slightly. When the clip ended, Rick cleared his throat. This footage was verified as authentic. It was recorded on July 22nd, at approximately 11:43 p.m. Someone in the crowd shouted, "She's been lying to all of us." Linda finally stood. "This is a misunderstanding," she said. "I was inspecting the erosion damage. It's part of my duty as HOA president." Another voice cut her off. At midnight, with a metal pole, murmurs turned into shouts. People demanded her resignation. A few yelled about suing the HOA for damages. Linda tried to regain control, slamming her hand on the table. "Order," she shouted. "You don't understand what's at stake here." Rick turned to her. "Linda, it's over." She looked around the room, her eyes glassy but wild. "You think you can run this community without me? Without structure? Without rules? This place will fall apart." Someone near the back muttered, "It already has." The vote to remove her wasn't even close. Within minutes, she was out. For a few days, things actually felt hopeful. The new board announced plans to dissolve most of Linda's restrictions. They even discussed reimbursing residents for unjust fines. The tension that had gripped Willow Creek for years began to fade. But Linda didn't move away. She stayed. Her house at the bottom of the cul-de-sac became a kind of ghost spot. Blinds always drawn, no one seen coming or going. Rumors spread. Some said she'd filed a lawsuit against the HOA. Others claimed she was trying to contact the county again, blaming me for the flooding. Then one night, I woke to the sound of a car idling outside. It was nearly midnight. Rain tapped softly on the windows. I looked out through the blinds and saw a pair of headlights parked near the edge of my driveway. After a minute, the engine shut off. I watched, heart pounding, as a figure stepped out and moved toward the creek. I couldn't see clearly in the dark, but the silhouette looked familiar, short, with a stiff, deliberate walk. "Linda." I grabbed my jacket and phone and went out the back door, keeping my flashlight low. The air smelled of wet earth and pine. I crept down toward the water, careful not to make a sound. When I reached the bank, she was standing there again, staring at the broken remains of the old dam. The rain had picked up, and her umbrella flapped uselessly in the wind. I called out, "Linda." She spun around, startled, slipping slightly on the mud. The flashlight caught her face, pale, hollow-eyed, exhausted. "What are you doing here?" I asked. Her voice shook, but it wasn't angry this time. "You don't understand, Mark." "None of them do." "Understand what?" She looked past me, toward the neighborhood lights reflecting in the rising water. "It's not over," she whispered. "You think you fixed it. But the creek, It's shifting. The ground's moving. It's coming back. Before I could respond, she turned and hurried away, back toward her car. I stood there for a long time, the rain pouring harder, the sound of water growing louder beneath my feet. When I finally shone my light on the creek, I saw it. The soil along the far bank was collapsing again, inch by inch, as the current tore deeper into the earth. The water was changing course, and it wasn't heading toward my property anymore. It was heading straight for the lower half of the neighborhood, the same area that had flooded last year. By morning, the rain still hadn't stopped. I went out to check the creek again, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The current had carved a new channel, wider, faster, and deeper. The flow had split into two streams now, one of them winding directly toward Linda's backyard. Emily came out onto the porch, clutching her robe. "Mark, what's happening?" I looked back at her, unsure how to answer. Because whatever was happening now, it wasn't just about revenge or rules anymore. It was something bigger, and it wasn't finished yet.